Welcome to the 2011 First Robotics Competition, and this year's game, Logo Motion. Logo Motion is played on a 27 by 54 foot field. Alliances of 3 teams each operate their robots from behind alliance walls at the end of the field. 4 towers are located near the middle of the field at the corners of designated lanes extending from each corner. 2 3 by 3 arrays of scoring pegs form the scoring boards located in front of each alliance wall. Robots play Logo Motion with inflated tubes shaped as elements of the first logo. The objective is to place the shapes on the scoring racks to create the logo. Robots can use their cameras to follow lines on the floor or to track the vision targets placed on each scoring rack. This allows them to target scoring locations from almost anywhere on the field. Before the match, each robot is placed behind the towers on their side of the field. Each robot begins the match with a yellow Uber tube. The match starts with a 15-second autonomous period, during which robots try to place the Uber tubes on the scoring rack. Each Uber tube placed during this period earns bonus points. At the end of the autonomous period, human drivers step forward to take the controls. During the teleoperated period, teams control their robots and attempt to place the game pieces on the scoring rack. Game pieces can be placed anywhere, but are worth more if they create a logo. Human players at the corners of the field put game pieces into play. Robots can possess only one game piece at a time, so they must drive the length of the field to score with each new game piece. Robots will try to make it into their alliance zone as they attempt to score. Opponents are not allowed to enter this zone and cannot interfere while robots are placing game pieces. Each game piece placed on the scoring rack is worth 1, 2, or 3 points. This value is doubled if the game piece numbers an Uber tube. Each completed logo earns a 2x bonus for that row of game pieces. Near the end of the match, robots drive to the towers and deploy mini-bots on the tower poles. As the endgame starts, mini-bots race to the top of the towers. The first mini-bot to the top earns a 30-point bonus. Second place earns 20, third place earns 15, and fourth place earns 10 points. Good luck, and we'll see you at the competitions.
Okay, so welcome back to StuyPulse History. This week we will be doing the 2011 season. Joining me are the co-presidents of engineering from the 2011 season, and I'll start with Adam, who was actually our driver. Operator from that year. Thanks for joining me, Adam.
Yeah, hey.
And Jonny was the other co-president of engineering, and he was our human player that year. Thanks for coming on, Jonny.
Yes, thanks for having me, Blay.
Yeah. And it's, for me, most of the people I've had on so far, I see pretty often, but you guys I don't see as often. So this is actually like a special side treat because, we used to hang out so much. I used to sleep at your house like after every meeting, Jonny.
Oh yeah, I definitely remember the early morning wake-ups to try to get to meetings.
Yeah, that was good times. So let's start talking about the season. I know that this was 9 years ago, but what do you guys remember from kickoff and your initial thoughts on the game? I'll kick it to whoever wants to go ahead. No.
Jonny can start it. Yeah, I mean it's been a while since I've watched this video. I think definitely first thing that came to mind. I remember those inner tubes, especially as the human player, and I guess human player for that year and the 2 years before. I remember just tossing those things as far down the field as I could and practicing that for a while.
Yeah, I remember that. So the human players were allowed to throw the tubes so it could set your robot up because you don't have to go all the way back to the human player station. But when we were practicing in the lab, our tubes were deflated. So you could get them a lot further. And when we got to the competition, they were so much more full. And it was a lot harder. I remember at one of the regionals, you threw out your arm. You were you came off the field and you were your shoulder was I was is your shoulder dislocated? What's happening?
I think I remember getting a massage from one of the parents because I had to grip those tubes so much harder to throw them.
Yeah. Adam, what were your recollections from kickoff?
Honestly, I remember bits and pieces. I mean, I remember more being in the pits and just fixing the robot every time it broke, and the scrambles running to and from matches, and I mean, I feel like those are the parts I remember more, less so like the actual mechanics of the game. But yeah, it was fun. It was an adrenaline rush, and there was definitely a lot going on there. And I mean, honestly, I just remember being with like you and Joe Rishi and Jonny and everybody in the waiting outside the barriers, going to the games and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna get to and talk about all those competition season stuff, but let's keep talking about the start of the season. Over here, is this your dad's diner?
That looks like my dad's diner. Yep.
That's funny. Oh, there's me. I think I really remember us when we were talking about early in the season. I think it was the first day we talked about what drivetrain we wanted to do. And we ended up going with the mechanism wheels. And I don't remember where we made that decision, but like as I've been going through these, like I've done 2006 up until this point, this is the first decision that I think we made as a team. Like, do you guys remember when we decided to do the mechanism wheels?
I'm trying to remember because I think I remember preseason we were going to try to take a stab at vector drive because we thought it'd just be really useful, and
never got there.
We never really got there. I think that decision and like deciding that like maneuverability was really key. I feel like that like carried over into like our decision for the drivetrain, especially since we had to like hang those tubes up, like getting that maneuverability to rotate in place.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people wanted to do. If you're misaligned, you can just straight to the side, and then you can just score. Or maybe you guys don't remember very well, but I don't remember exactly where it was, but we were at someone's house, and we took a vote if we wanted to do the mechanism drive or not. And I was definitely one of the people who was like, this is a bad idea. We shouldn't do this. And I still maintain to this day that we shouldn't have done mechanism wheels. But I think the really cool thing is I think that was the first time we made a major robot decision as a team, and the president or presidents weren't just like, this is what we're doing. And that has grown. Like today, the presidents don't make those kinds of decisions. Like the team makes those kinds of decisions, and it really helps people buy in and execute things a lot better. I think that was like came from you guys, because even though I think some mentors, including myself, were like, you guys got to make the decisions. You guys wanted to incorporate everyone's opinion, which was really good.
Hey, Joe, did we not do multiple drivetrains in parallel because of that? Like, at least maybe leading up to that decision. Did we not have like two paths going together?
We built two robots. We built a practice bot, but they were.
Well, I thought we just built a chassis. Like, I thought we built multiple chassis trying to figure that out. Is that not true? Am I mixing up years?
I only remember the one. I know two bots.
Yeah,
sure.
we did two bots. I don't think we did the multiple drive trains. I think that might have been 2008 that we did the multiple like paths, because we were doing the steering, and then we locked it in.
Okay, never mind. Yeah.
My 2008 remembering stuff from our first year.
I do think that like the mechanism had to do with why we did the two robots, because we wanted software to have a drivetrain to make sure that they could get the mechanism. I think that's what you might be thinking of. Because
I was also going to say that one of the things I do remember was the mechanism was also for the autonomous period, because the software team wanted to have that maneuverability to just have total control up to the target. Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. Which, I look back on, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You just need to go forward. The thing's right in front of you. You don't need to go sideways. But I'm not going to get into it. I hate mechanism. But it was, you see here, these are all software people, actually. Like, that's Carrillo. There's Ariel. There's Arthur. I don't know who that is. Who is that? I don't know. But there's Peter. Like, these are all software people. And they had a drivetrain kind of from the beginning of the season. They had the drivetrain, and they just got to work out their how this was all going to work. And this is the first time we ever built a practice bot. Okay, so in terms of the arm, we looked a lot at this robot. Where is it? That's not it. This one. from 2007, and I remember we were like staring at this for a while, like modeling our arm off of it. Do you guys remember who designed the arm? I know it was one of you two.
I think that was Jonny.
I think it was me who designed the arm part of that linkage.
Yeah, and I think Jake designed the rollers, the claw.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yes.
Well,
Yes.
that claw was great. It was just the mistake we made was we geared a little too slow, so it would just slowly take in the tubes.
I also remember that arm being fiberglass, right? I think.
You talk a little bit about that. What happened there? That whole fiberglass story.
I know we wanted it for like weight, but that thing I remember being so fragile, and I know there were like concerns about like fiber, just manufacturing it in the first place, like fiberglass getting in someone's lungs,
carcinogens,
wearing masks, carcinogens.
Also, when we swung it around, it would like flex a little bit too, right? Like I don't think, right?
It would flex, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely flexed. It definitely could have been done.
Yeah, I think we saved like a couple of ounces by doing it. I remember it would chip, like when we would drill into it. Like any place where there was a hole, that hole would just like open up over time. Especially
I feel like we definitely brought a spare of those because it was just not. Yeah, looking back,
by spare you mean the arm off of the practice robot? Then yeah, we definitely.
Yeah, I mean that's what that was for, right?
But it actually worked, really well. We had this kind of there's like a hinge thing. I wonder if there's a picture of our bot, where you can see it. Here we go. There's like a hinge in here so that this could start in frame, and then when the match started, it would swing out and stay out there. There's like a really neat, clever way to get it to start in configuration, not have to actuate anyway. We didn't have any pneumatics on it. Otherwise, you could just replace this with a piston. Any other, things you remember about the arm or robot design in general that you want to share with the students?
I like this again. I remember those gas springs, just trying to help make the arm actually move. That motor was definitely
you were trying to get it so it like stayed at a certain level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that motor just didn't have the ability to keep it up there.
Yeah, as we would drive around, our arm would keep falling also. I remember we had a big problem with just supporting the weight of that thing out there. But yeah, I also remember, like you were talking about early decisions, I also remember deciding on rollers pretty early on. And just everyone was like, no, we're not doing pneumatics, we're not doing this, we're not doing this. And then rollers seemed like the clear thing. I also think part of that was because we knew that we wanted to rotate the roller within the hand. So not only is the hand flexible relative to the arm, kind of, when you push on it, but also we wanted to be able to rotate the tube for the middle layer or the top layer and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so like because the top and bottom roller are independently powered, you can run them in opposite directions and that would spin the tube. And that was a really nice feature.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really great mechanism. I think, if we were to do it again, there are little changes I would suggest that we make. The most important of which is like speed up the rollers. But it worked really well. Like it would take in those tubes, it would score them. I thought it was a really great mechanism. Any other things about the robot?
Sorry, say it again.
Any other things that you recall in the robot that you want to point out?
Well, you were saying speeding up the rollers. Wasn't it at one point that we were pulling in the tubes too tight? We were popping them? I feel like there was...
Put on the limit switch.
Limit switch actually sand down the entire part of the gripper.
There was a limit switch buried in here, but it would the flag on it would constantly break. So it was like supposed to stop running the rollers when the tube was in, but the flag would just break, so it wouldn't work, and we would either like smoke the motors or break the tubes. So yeah, that wasn't perfect. We could have done that better. But my issue is that like sometimes we would touch the tube and we would drive away and we wouldn't have it. Like we would have to like stay on the tube to really bring it in. Yeah. But you really want it to be like in, like you touch it and it's in.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could have something that would have been able to suck it in more, because I think where we had it, especially rolling it against, where we didn't have a lot of clearance against the ground, so we couldn't just shovel it in with the help of the rollers. Like we had to like actually put the tube into the rollers.
Yeah. Something that we do now, there was like a similar mechanism that we had in the 2019 season, and the motors now are brushless motors with integrated encoders. So it's a Hall effect sensor, it's called, because a brushless motor needs an encoder to work. So the software kids worked on a stall detection, so it detects like if the roller's not spinning because it's taking something in, and then it eases off the power or turns it off entirely. And that worked pretty well. The motors would squeal for a second or two.
That's pretty cool.
That's better than burning out motors.
Yeah. Also, the motors are a lot more durable now. They don't. Oh, that reminds me. Didn't we have a big issue with the arm motor?
Yep, I was about to bring that up.
Talk about it.
That arm motor burned out. I think we burned at least 2. Maybe two at a competition.
Yeah, no, that was one of
I remember Adam and I would take the bot off the field, and one time it was just like, it smells like smoke. Like, is it another bot? No, that's ours. We need to go take that back to the pits and fix this.
I remember showing up one weekend and there was a computer fan on the robot pointing at the motors, which I believe was there all throughout the season.
Yeah, we definitely, I don't think, geared that one. And also think of the chassis. I think the Mechnum wheel thing and like why it didn't work super well. Like, there was something in our A-frame that just wasn't done perfectly well. So I think I remember our chassis warping slightly. So sometimes we only have 3 wheels on the ground. Which does not work for Mechnum.
No.
Yeah, I remember we had really a lot of problems with warpage. I do remember that, actually. I think that's why we needed that second frame. You see that second, that thing right there? I think that's why we added it, because we kept warping so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know what that's for.
I think it was to reinforce the frame so it would stay flat, because our wheels kept coming off the ground. Like exactly what Jonny was just saying. I remember that, actually.
Interesting.
I'm trying to remember why we wouldn't have made like triangles or something. Like why we did another square.
Yeah. There's like much lighter ways we could do that, something like that.
Yeah.
I think, as I recall it, I think we modeled this upper frame a little bit after the 2010 robot because the bumpers had to be higher on that one. So we had like 2 frames, and I think we just kind of replicated that. That's how I remember it. It's not important. But you're definitely right. We had a lot of warping issues with the drivetrain, and with Mechnum especially, it's super important that all 4 wheels are on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, unless we have anything else we want to say about these mechanisms, let's talk a little bit about the mini-bot. So I don't know if I have any images, but while I try to pull some up, why don't you guys talk about anything you remember from the mini-bot saga?
Honestly,
I just remember Wild Card.
We started with Osimo. No recollection of that?
No, I remember Wild Card. I don't remember.
I think I have an image of it. I think there's an image of it somewhere. Here's you and Profeta working on this thing, Adam.
Yeah, I remember working on it, but for the life of me, I cannot remember what we actually did. Did we end up going with magnets to hold it?
We went with magnets.
That was for Wild Card. The first one did not have magnets. Where is it? There was definitely an image in here.
Because I remember it kept falling off, and then I think that's why we added the magnets. Like, it kept, as it would zoom up, it would just fall backwards.
It would go flying. Yeah. Here we go. Here's an early iteration.
Oh man.
Oh, yeah. I remember. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now I can talk about that because now I remember it. So basically we'd come onto the pole and the robot would be horizontal, and then we actually use the weight of the robot to pull it down on a wheel. And then so we effectively had like 2 wheels that would then grip and drive up the pole. So I think because we kept having a problem with the weight, we ended up actually incorporating that into the design. And by coming in horizontal, our 2 wheels didn't have to be on the pole all that much. So we were able to like clasp onto the pole and then use the weight to fall and get us.
So there are a couple of important details about this challenge that I want to share with the kids. So we had to use an FTC battery to power this mini bot. We had to use FTC Tetrix motors, which were crap. Like those things just stunk. And they had built-in gearboxes, and they were turned very slow. So, I remember early in the year we were looking at the rules, we were checking out the Q&A, and it turns out you could take those gearboxes apart and modify them. So what most teams did was they took that gearbox off, they threw it in the garbage, and they just extended the shaft on the motor to get it to go as fast as possible. But we like modified the gears in there to just make it like a little bit faster for this one. So it was still pretty slow, but it was a little bit faster than it should have been. But I think the real issue we had was we couldn't figure out how to get this thing onto the rung.
Yeah.
It was like really, really hard. And I remember Joe Ricci was like trying to work with somebody to just like have it fling out, like just surgical tubing madness. That never worked. We showed up to New York City and it was like, it didn't work. I don't think it worked once in New York City, right? I don't think it ever went up.
I thought is that not something that we brought to New York?
I think we brought it and we tried to deploy it a bunch of times, but I don't think it ever went up. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure though.
Yeah, we'll probably have a video that we can look at.
Yeah, I don't have any video of New York City. I have video from Connecticut. But we'll get to
Connecticut. It went up, right? I mean, it was just New York that you're saying.
Connecticut, we got we had wild card.
Yeah.
So I don't think this one ever went up. I don't think this iteration ever went up. Yeah, I don't think so. There were some like other concepts. There was this one that somehow clamped. See Dan here with Profeta working on that, and I guess it would clamp on, and there'd be little wheels in there. It was a really interesting challenge. There was never one like this, and there hasn't been one since. I think it was a really neat challenge.
I see some magnets involved in that clamping there.
Where?
The metal on the outside of the PVC.
Oh yeah, I see some on the outside of the PVC. I see that now.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Anything else about this robot before we hop over to the competition season?
I'm trying to remember. I also feel like that camera and trying to protect that camera was
that camera which we never used for anything.
Yeah, but we had plans to. Just making that like box around it was fraught with like wet sand bubbles and trying to get something that was like super clear.
That's something we didn't talk about. Do you guys remember what we used to for sensors in Auton? Because we didn't use the camera. I believe we tracked this line, right?
I think we did. I think that's what the front was.
Yeah, I think there were 2 line sensors up front, and we would follow this line. But I recall the robot like doing a shimmy as it would approach, like it would try to stay on the line.
I think especially with Mecanum and the 3 wheels that were touching the ground, I think driving straight was never incredibly straightforward to do from a programming standpoint.
Yeah. It's especially Mecanum, regardless of if you have 4 wheels on the ground or not. Obviously 3 is really hard, but if you have 4 wheels on the ground, it's hard to keep track of encoder data because you lose, like you don't really go forward as far as you turn because you're losing forces going. Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to look if there's anything else on here that we didn't mention about the build season. We move on. Oh, we painted that arm. We painted this arm.
We did. It used to be green.
It was green, and we painted it. I just remember waiting like a full day for that arm to be done, and just like pacing and fuming. Like, why are we painting this freaking arm?
I thought we painted it so like there'd be less fiberglass chipping.
I think we painted it so it would be red.
Yeah,
I think a combination of the 2.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if I'm making this up right now, but was this also one of the first years when we finished the robot so quickly so we had time to practice and the program programmers. But, like, I remember that being one of the big things of that year was we weren't scrambling to the last minute, which was kind of unheard of.
Yeah, so we finished in 5 weeks is how I recall it. And then software had a lot of time to make sure Mechanism worked right, to make sure we could track that line. I remember the software was just like at a higher level that year in terms
And
of
also driver practice. Also, I think driver practice too was able to benefit in whatever you call Jonny's role, the support human player. Thank you. Human player had more time to practice. I mean, I just felt like as a team, we were all able to relax a little more and like focus on competition related things.
Then we made a second bot.
Yeah. So you guys worked on the CAD and did I think a really good job on it. I just remember being like thinking to myself, like, maybe I never said it because I can't let students think that I know that they're doing well, but I'm getting complacent. But I remember thinking like, wow, the CAD's in like a really good place. Like all these mechanisms were in CAD. The one thing we didn't design though was the mini bot, like deployment system, all that stuff. And it was like we had this. We don't really do it anymore, which I'm like super thankful for. But we always had like end game was an afterthought.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out later in the season. We'll put something up, which is just like never a good way to go about something. We did figure it out. Like this robot just shows you, like, if students really have this robot and understand it well, they can make really great things.
Yeah, and kind of just like to your point of what you were talking about in the beginning, like the programmers had access to the drivetrain, even if it was the second drivetrain or whatever. Like I just felt like it was more cooperative than. I mean, it was just a different style. I think it was a big incremental improvement in organization that year, and I think it paid off.
Yeah, because we had Seth, who was president 2 years before that, and it was so top heavy. And I talked about it last week not 2 weeks ago when I did the 2010 episode. I had Seth, Unger, and Betsy on, and I talked specifically with Unger about how, like, when Seth got suspended and didn't come to Connecticut, we kind of fell flat because like we weren't ready for that. And I agree with you. Like this year in 2011, it really felt more like a group, like you guys.
Yeah. Also being with co-presidents and everything too, basically agree.
And I think back to that time, and I remember being like thinking to myself, this is terrible. We got to have like one person just leading the whole charge, and just being, looking back and being like, wow, I was just totally wrong about all that. And we grew in so many good ways because of you guys doing it this way. So thanks for not listening to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was based on personalities and stuff too. I think like Jonny and I went in with different mindsets. I mean, yeah, it was. I just remember that being a big difference this year was the approach of building a robot rather than the actual engineering of building a robot.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah.
And we like grew in lots of ways. Like this was the first year we had a president of software. Like this was the first year software was really, like, we had a director of programming, and this year we had a president of software engineering, and like we had Gene as a mentor. And it our software department when you guys started on the team was 1 or 2 people, and by your senior year it was like 10 people.
Yeah, I remember growing a lot, and I mean, I guess I never really followed exactly what they did, at least the details of it. But yeah, I remember I was relying on like 1 or 2 people my first year.
And then the last thing I have on my list is the bumpers looked really nice for the first time. It's like, look at those bumpers. That's important. Bumpers are important. People look at that.
The painting of that cloth never went well.
Who built those our senior year? I forget.
Who built those? I don't know. The bumper makers, the unsung heroes.
It used to be one of the years was Perfetto, but then now looking at your photos, Perfetto is doing the little robot. So I don't know if he switched over or I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah. But I do remember these bumpers were like no issue. It was really terrific, and they look nice.
And I think it probably was the year before this year that we got like the quick release system for the bumpers.
Oh yeah.
Remember like the pins that we could just take out.
Yes.
Here we go. We got some early bumpers here. Nope, that's not a bumper.
Even land, wow.
Yeah, I don't know. But this is cool. I just stumbled upon this. This is our robot cart. This is cool. You guys built in like little rollers so the wheels would fit on there and you could spin in place on the
Yeah,
cart.
I think this was for, actually I think this was one of my pet projects. Was doing this so that the programmers could test the robot while in the pit, while on the field. Like basically the programmers could be running the wheels while we were not allowed to be on the field.
Right.
So this was mostly for competition.
And you have, I really like this, you put little lengths of carpet on the roller too.
I think that was a necessity. I think it was just, otherwise it would like just go crazy. So yeah.
Nice feature. Okay, let's hop over to the competition season. So I don't have any videos from that. I have pictures. We went to New York City, and it wasn't super terrific. Like we were good at scoring the tubes, but the mini bot wouldn't score, and we weren't hitting the autons. But you could see there was potential. Like I remember 359 Hawaiian kids were at the competition. And they're like, their coach, it was the first time I met him. Like now I know him pretty well. It's like, there's something in your robot. There's something good in there. There's a lot of potential. What do you guys remember from the New York City Regional? Nothing.
Jonny,
Yeah, trying to remember. Besides that smoking mirror or that smoking motor.
Yeah, I just remember being in the pits a lot. I remember running back and forth and yeah, the arm and again, yeah, like you said, the little robot was constant iterations. I feel like that one was a blur because we were constantly working on the robot instead of being able to focus on the competition.
The robot broke a lot in New York City. Let's see, what else? Oh,
also looking at I think I saw a picture like that button box. I don't know where you're scrolling anymore.
Should I be scrolling down or up?
Up, I think.
Okay.
Stop. And go like 3 down. Maybe another one down. There it is in the middle. You went too far. It's like one of the center pictures. Like, I think it's the only picture I saw like of our
who's in the
operating system.
Wait, I think he's talking about 2 below the purple shirt. I think.
Yeah, 2 below the purple shirt.
Okay, you're talking about the OI.
Yeah.
I hated those so much because these were all. Well, Adam, you can talk about this. Do you remember what these did?
This was me on the box. I don't remember hating it as much as you seem to hate it.
I'll explain what I hate about it. You go ahead. Talk about it a little bit. Explain what it is.
I mean, so I'm pretty sure. I mean, now this is me remembering, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, there was one set of commands for rotating the tube in place. There was one set of commands for controlling the arm, and just one for sucking in the tube. And who is driver? Was that Carrillo?
Yep, Alex Carrillo.
Yeah, and and then I mean, I didn't have any issues with it the way you're talking about it.
Here's my issue. I think Jonny knows what my issue was. Jonny, do you want to take a guess?
I'm remembering those buttons. Us trying to rely on those buttons to place the arm and the tube, and it never really worked out.
We spent, I want to say, a good week trying to get all these buttons to be the height of the tube on the rung, and then you just ended up using a joystick or something to the heights. Like, I don't think you ever used buttons.
Oh, was that set positions? No, well, I remember that being rolling the tube.
Yeah. But
that was built into the joystick. Okay, yeah, maybe that was. Yeah, maybe you're right. Yes.
Because the thing I don't like about these custom things is we always spent a lot of time on them, and then either the functionality wasn't like super worth it, or it just didn't work at all. Like the software spent so much time trying to get the encoder heights right on the arm, and it wasn't that valuable. Like they should have been spending time, getting Auton working.
Yeah, I think it's because we didn't have
live and learn.
like we didn't have a neutral arm. It was always moving if you had it up at all.
Yeah, so they would have a thing where it would try to like move to the same spot. And I remember we smoked at least a couple motors with them testing it, just trying to get it to stay in a set position.
And I also think what you guys were talking about at the beginning with the tubes not being inflated versus overinflated, I think that also messed up some of this as well, because when they weren't as inflated in at school, it was much easier. It had a lot more tolerance to it, to putting it on the rungs.
Yeah, actually, so that's something that's a problem every year. And this was the year that really made me realize it. So nowadays, whenever there's an inflatable game piece and they're inflating it, I'm like, no, inflate it till you're genuinely scared it's about to pop. That's how they'll do it at competition.
Yeah.
And then like they bring it over and I give it a couple more pumps because they always would inflate. It was like the pressure was supposed to be in the manual, and then it was just like you literally were worried that you blow on it and it would pop. It was so freaking inflated.
I think I also remember like we didn't have very many, which also made us worried.
Yeah, we were really worried about popping them.
I'm thinking back to like 2 years before when we had those moon balls or whatever, and we like scoured to make sure we had tons of them. I guess with like these custom things, we didn't have that option.
Yeah. Also, nowadays we just use 2 game pads, one for the operator, one for the driver. So it's like it's nice because it's just like this is your limit. Figure out what the best controls are. That's what we code it for, and we don't spend time like perfecting it. Because when you do customization for everybody, like you just end up spending so much time and you get very little out of it.
Especially like if you're fighting for which team has the robot.
Exactly.
Both teams always need to be doing something with it.
Oh, I just remembered this 694 thing that Ariel made on the Bridgeport. That was really cool.
Wasn't that the plate that kept the arm down until we were ready to go?
So that was, that was the right height for picking up the tubes. So the arm would clear it to get out of frame perimeter, and then this thing would snap back down, and then would rest on it when we were picking up tubes. It's actually like a really nice little clever device that Ariel added.
I remember it Jonny's way, where it was just for like in the pits and everything, holding that thing down.
So
no, I think it was just in the pits.
So there was this servo here with a rope tied to this arm, and what would happen is the start of the match. That's what stopped the arm from popping out. Like the wrist would pop out. So at the start of the match, that would release, and the wrist would pop out, and then you would bring the arm up, and then that 694 thing would snap open and then closed, and when you brought it down, the arm would rest on that, and that would be like the 2 pickup height. Because if that thing wasn't there, you would end up going too low, and the wrist would.
Resting for 2 pickup off the floor. Yes.
Right.
Okay, I thought you meant resting. Okay. Yes.
I mean, it's actually like a really clever solution because we had this issue where you had to get the arm at like just the right spot to pick up tubes, which is like impossible to do if you're trying to pick up tubes. You want to just like rest it and drive, and when we were driving, the thing would just flop down. So I think it was Ariel and Sam Unger worked on this, and they just slapped it on the bot, and it worked great. And they, milled the 694 in the middle of it, which is even cooler, and backed it with some red stuff.
Yep.
I think all these hard stops though definitely contribute to motor stall or motor burnout. Because it'd be like go down until you hit that, and then just keep running the arm, and then.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely better ways to do that, but it was a nice afterthought for. It was a nice solution. It was a great solution to a problem that should have never existed. Never had existed.
Considering we already had it, yes.
Okay, so we go through quals. We struggle a lot. We ended up. Oh, here's the mini bot attempt.
Oh yeah, I remember that wooden platform on the slides.
We had these roar slides, and then it was like surgical tubing to fling it out, but it wouldn't go far enough to actually reach the pole, so we would just fail every time. It was not good. And there was a light switch.
Like the V cut in the wood, which you can't see in this photo, but there was like a giant V cut, and I remember that.
Yeah. So we go through quals. We struggle. Team 2601, the Steelhawks, ended up picking us. And so they were the Lions captains, and they were like a young team, pretty inexperienced. And I remember they they actually asked me to coach them, or like Joe convinced them to have me coach them. So I threw on it. This was terrible. I should have never done this. We should have never done this. This is so like I look back at this in horror, but it happened. I threw on a 2601 shirt, and then I was their drive coach for a lens. That was still pretty fun. Which is the first time I ever drive coached at an official match. We were eliminated like right away. But the thing that happened right early in limbs is we scored an Uber tube for the first time. And then we realized a big problem about our robot, which is we never really tried scoring when there was an Uber tube on the rack. So like, if you're just scoring a tube, there's lots of space. So if you outtake, the tube scores. But that peg only really has space for 2 tubes. So if there's one already on there and you try to score another one, you really have to get her on there nicely. And we just like, we went out that match, we scored the Uber tube, and then you guys just like couldn't put the tube on top.
Yeah.
And you need to overscore it. So it was like, it's 3 points each for scoring up top. So it's 9 points plus whatever the logo bonus is. If you get an Uber tube, all those point totals get doubled. So like,
so it's essentially a 4x. Yeah,
us not being able to score on top of an Uber tube was kind of a major problem that we never realized. And the thing that a lot of teams did that year that we missed out on was they had their roller claw and they would have a pneumatic on it so that they could release. So that when they went to score, they could just let go and drive away, as opposed to what we did, we rolled out.
Yeah.
The tubes.
Yeah, I do remember. I feel like this year and a couple years before, we were pretty anti-pneumatics.
Because in 2008, we had so many issues with pneumatics. I
remember being on the pneumatic team that first year.
But
pneumatics to make that puncher.
So pneumatics have actually improved a lot in recent years. They're much lighter. The compressor is very light. There are plastic tanks. We actually, not last year, the year before, we had a giant aluminum, like 2-gallon tank for all of our air.
Wow.
It's just a lot lighter because you don't need like fittings for everything. There's better solenoids. But back in 2011, there were a lot of issues with pneumatics, a lot of leaks. It was very heavy.
Also, battery power of charging up the pump constantly was also, I remember, an issue. Probably batteries are better now.
Batteries are the same, but we actually did more research and we buy a better battery.
Okay.
And the kids, so like this battery was available before, but we just didn't buy it. We just bought whatever Andy Mark sold. Like a couple years ago, we did some research. The kids also do things where they test the batteries under load between matches, and they track like a battery's performance before a match, after a match, just to make sure we're not using bad batteries on the field. It's like a whole professional setup. It's pretty awesome. Like they keep a Google Doc.
Big step up from Battery Girl.
Oh, Battery Girl. Let's not talk about that. Here's the match where we scored the Uber tube and tried desperately to score on top of it. And you can see that we were not successful in scoring on top of it. Oh, not good. So New York City ended up 395 and 359 ended up winning. 395, they didn't even score up top. They were just able to score an Uber tube on the second row and get a mini bot. They were just very consistent. And they won that. I thought that was like, I look back at that, and eventually we ended up with a significantly better bot than them. But at that point, because we didn't have those key portions of the game locked down, we really struggled. So I think it's really important, for the kids listening, to think about what are the key elements you need to have of the game, what things are going to set you apart in an early competition, and just make sure you have those on lock. Like, you shouldn't be showing up to your first competition without any game lockdown. You shouldn't be showing up to your first competition without Auton lockdown. Like those, you're not winning early competitions if you don't have those things, pretty much no matter what you do, because there's always going to be teams who are on top of that stuff. Okay, anything else from New York City before we move on to Connecticut? I have here that Carrillo won the Dean's List. So Good job, Krillo. With his
Is that what that photo is right in the middle?
Yep.
Is he?
I guess maybe Daron wrote it.
Yeah, probably.
Yes. I remember. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we nominate like our juniors
Yeah. So
for that.
I think back then you weren't required to nominate juniors. Now you are. I feel like we did a junior and a senior this year. I'm not sure.
I thought we did juniors just because we were like the seniors are already set. Like,
Yeah. I'm not sure. But Krillo won. So.
Woo.
Okay. On to Connecticut. We really struggled in New York City, but we had a big advantage, which was we had practice. So you guys were able to come back and rethink the deployer on the mini bot. Do you guys remember what you ended up changing the deployer to? Worked.
No, I remember putting magnets to pull it onto the pole. I remember that being a big change.
Yeah, we had the mini bot. But actually, the whole deployment system, I think that was the real big leap that we made. Not really we changed the mini bot a lot, but here's a picture. You guys added an alignment mechanism. This one right here.
Oh yes,
And then we just drove onto the pole.
Do you think you could describe this? So I'm not doing all the talking.
I mean, so basically, it was this was like just a giant tube structure, very lightweight. I remember that, and so it would fall down, and then we just drive into the pole, and because it had the alignment there, it made sure that even if we couldn't see the pole all that well, like basically we drive forward and we would almost consistently hit it time after time.
Yeah, and
I think that's what that backup camera was for.
yeah, this camera was so that Alex could see what was happening when he was doing the mini bot stuff.
Okay, yeah. I don't remember that being used too much, but sure.
It was like, I know for a fact that when I started coaching that later that year, and we'll get to that, I was like, don't do that anymore.
Yeah. No, I remember it was just drive, and hit the button and go. Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing about this game is you weren't allowed to release your mini bot before a time. I think it was 15 seconds left in the match. I'm not positive on the time, but you were allowed to contact the pole. So we had you guys set up a 2-phase thing, and this is actually really awesome because I was just away at college and I came back and this thing was built. I'm like, oh, this is great. This thing works great. So you had this. I think we called it the drawbridge, if my recollection serves me right. I think it's called the drawbridge. Let's see if it's written anywhere. Anyway, we dropped this drawbridge. That would align us. And I don't know if we had it right away, but there was a limit switch in there to tell the robot that we were aligned already.
Uh-huh.
And then there was a motorized rack and pinion setup. It wasn't really a rack. It was like a pulley and a belt, like a belt that you guys screwed into the side of the drawer slides.
Yeah.
Roll it out. I think Dripto worked on that. And it would come out, and then the mini bot would go up. Jonny, is that how you remember it too?
Yeah, I do remember us getting away from that.
Surgical tubing.
Surgical tubing.
And the deployment system worked really well, worked really consistently. My only critique on it looking back was that we geared it really slowly because we just wanted something that worked, which I think is fair, right? We went through and we had something that just didn't work an entire competition and it killed us. But it was just like when you really wanted it.
Yeah. I do remember that. Yeah, and I remember that actually kind of hurt us in competition was there were a couple times where we lost just on the speed of that. But when this thing hit the pole, I remember it shot up like crazy.
Yeah. So now this is high quality footage here. I'll just play these in the background as we talk about Connecticut. Very nice. So we were working in kind of like 2 stages. You guys were, I think most of the team was working still on Osimo, getting Osimo to work. So like the gear down thing.
One.
And then Ariel messaged me one day and was like, with his Chief Delphi post where someone had made a mini bot with magnets and like a direct drive into the motor. and it worked really well. And he's like, I think we should make, but the team isn't working on awesome. I was like, let's figure it out. Just do it anyway, whatever. What's it gonna hurt? Just work on it on the side. So Ariel and I would literally look at this photo. We were there was a penny in the photo for scale. We were like counting pixels to see the size of everything on that, because there was no CAD that this person publicized. They just made this thing. So Ariel and I would like just stay up late, and we were just like counting pixels to figure out the size of everything on there. And then he machined this mini bot and made it, and we called it the wild card. And we showed up to Connecticut, and we just like put it on a pole, and it just flew up. Trying to get a clip that shows it. Is there anything else you remember about the wild card mini bot?
I remember it hitting the top and falling off. I don't know if that was early on, but I remember it slamming the top so hard, so fast, that it would pop itself off.
That's right. There were times where it would hit and then just go flying off the pole. I mean, It wasn't a super refined thing. It was like Ariel making it in the back of the lab, almost in secret. It wasn't perfect by any means. Here we are.
Yeah.
Here. But when we went to the practice matches, like Osimo still didn't work, because you had to deploy him in such a way that he like tilted on, whereas, and you have to like release, there was like a servo to release him from like a cage or something. Whereas for the wild card, because it was just, it hit the pole, there was a magnet, a limit switch hit, and it went up. It didn't clamp or anything. There was nothing you needed to release. He just had 2 pieces of conduit and bolts that came up, so it would hit and go up. So there was no release from that stage. So I remember like after the first couple practice matches when Osimo didn't work, you guys slapped on the bolts and wild card, and he went out there, and it kind of worked.
Yeah, I do remember those bolts to hold it vertical, because otherwise it would like fall forward or fall backwards and stuff. Yeah.
Here we go. Hopefully we can see it here. And you can actually see so Alex would have it. He pressed like 2 buttons on the controller. The controls would flip. The camera would turn on the computer, and everything was at like half speed. So you can see the horrific slowdown here in driving.
So I'm trying to remember how we got the mini bots down ever once they got up.
They would fall down.
I think it just fell.
Here it goes. There it goes. Yeah, there was like a button on the top, like a light switch, not a light switch button, but like a push button. So the motors would turn on, and when it hit the top, that button would get hit, and then it would sink back down.
I think we had like some like a rod or something just right above it, right?
We had some what?
Like a rod, like some cylinder sticking upwards.
Yeah, something like that. See, I don't know. I didn't really, like, I was involved in helping Ariel figure out how it worked, but I wasn't really there to like help him build it. And then you guys, when you made more of them, I was in college for all that stuff. My recollection is nil for that.
Yeah, we did have multiple backups.
Not at Connecticut. I think we had like 1 or 2 total wild cards. We might have just had 1 wild card.
I also remember us I remember us having multiple, maybe not at Connecticut, maybe after that, but I also remember only like the first one always worked the best, and like really the duplicates were not as good, even though we couldn't figure out why.
Yeah, I mean the first one was the one like Ariel made, and I don't think it ever broke. Here we go.
Yeah, it was just there we go.
Yeah, it worked really well. I mean, it was just super consistent. But you see, like time for time, when this is like for you guys, when it's flashing yellow, that's when you're not allowed to deploy, and then when it flashes red, you are allowed to deploy. So like the plane of this cylinder, the mini bot can cross it, and you can see how much we struggled to get lined up before that 10-second mark, because we've lost like 3-4 seconds off of mini bot time.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember whether or not, like, I might just be completely forgetting. Did we have the deployment somewhat program to go at the second, or was that like that wasn't a.
So we had a great thing that was implemented for champs, where the software guys would have the robot knew the time of the field. It would like through the FMS. So at 10 seconds, it would auto release as long as that limit switch on the drawbridge was pressed. So Adam, I think you would just had to hold a button or something to indicate that you were ready. Is that correct?
Now that you guys are saying it, I'm remembering it, but it makes me sound like such a good code driver.
I mean, this was really hard because if you released it early,
Yeah.
it didn't count.
Yeah.
And if you released it late, you were basically losing time. This was a race. You got more points for getting there early. So all these little details really mattered. And there were teams who, like all the best mini bots, had that sort of automation. And there were some teams who maybe had a better deployment system, had a slightly faster mini bot, but they were slower than us just because we released as soon as we were allowed to release because it was in code. And, why make it harder for the operator?
Yeah, also consistency and stuff. Yeah, no, and these things shot up so fast that every fraction of a second counted. So yeah.
And this is an interesting note in the game. Once all the mini bots hit the top, once 4 hit, the game would stop. So even if the clock hadn't run out. So there are matches like on Einstein and stuff where the match ends at 8 seconds left because 2 seconds was all it took for all the mini bots to come up.
Yeah.
Connecticut went, pretty well. The mini bot worked well, but the one thing we still didn't have down was the auton. We kept missing the autons. And then when we did hit let's see if we hit this one. I think we do. Nice. I think once we did hit them, we still struggled to score on top of them. Let's see how we do when we try it here.
Or not. I think also
Oh, okay. We've been spending a minute trying, so nothing's changed.
I think
there we
the
go.
super inflation definitely made it even harder, right? Because there's even less room with it being so inflated.
Yep.
Yeah, they were very, yeah.
And I think a good way to think about, what you want to do for a mechanism like this is, you generally want to do rollers if you're picking something up off the ground. Rollers are usually the best way to go. But if you need to place an object, you want to be able to place it, not spit it out. I mean, if you're scoring into a big area, then, spit it out by all means. But if you just want to place it very specifically, you really want to be able to let go of it without agitating it.
Now that you're saying that, I remember one of the things we did at the end was we ended up spinning the tube onto the pole and then yanking the arm down until it pulled itself out. I think that's how we got around it. And I remember that was a big part of.
Yeah, so we still struggled with it, but I remember there was one day I came in and I just practiced with you and Alex with the practice bot for hours. Do you remember this, Adam?
I do remember lots of practice. Yeah, I don't know this particular day, but yeah, I do. Yeah.
It was just I think, all right. I remember there was people saying that we were just incapable of doing it. I was like, that's an unacceptable attitude. And I just rushed. I may have missed a class in college to come in. And I came into a meeting and just I rushed over and we just practice, just scoring on top of an Uber tube. We basically were how do you describe it, Adam? The motion?
So if this is the pole, we would come in like this with the tube, like this, rotate it so the tube is facing forward, and then pull the arm down, and it would catch on the lip of the pole. But it was the downward motion would prevent what you were talking about with spinning it and bouncing it out. So we would get an up-down bounce, but we wouldn't get a forward-backwards bounce. And so it still wasn't amazing, but it did solve our problem.
Yeah. So it was you were almost trying to replicate the speed of the outtake with the downward motion of the arm. Yeah. So the tube wouldn't move. So yes. Don't beat yourself up. That's an incredibly hard task for an operator.
And also with driving away, you have
while driving away.
Yeah. So Alex would be driving away. I'd be slamming the arm down and rotating it. And I'm pretty, I remember lots of times hitting our hand on the middle rung. If we were going for the top rung, we would like smack it into the middle rung, but we'd get the point and we just kept going. So
Yeah.
I do remember
times we got caught up.
Sorry?
I think there were times we like got the arm caught on the second.
On the second rung, yes.
Okay. So yeah, Hartford, we did a lot better. Like we looked a lot better, but we were still inconsistent with Minibot, like getting aligned, and we were very inconsistent with autos. And Hartford was a very strong regional. I think if we had performed at New York the way we performed at Connecticut, we probably still wouldn't have won because those top two teams really had their stuff together. But we definitely would have been one of the top robots there. And we were kind of working our way up at Connecticut. We ended up losing again in semifinals, but this time we were a captain. We won the Chairman's Award for the second straight year at Connecticut. This was 195 was a really dominant team. They're one of the best teams in the world now, which is why I mentioned it. This was the first year they were very good. There's the maneuver, Adam.
Wait, can you replay it? Can you go back?
Yeah, I did.
Yep, there you go. You see, push it, rotate it forward, and then pull. Yep, exactly. Yep.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. That was just, at that point, I mean, you were talking about all the practice. I think at that point, it was just muscle memory for me and Alex, because there's no way to coordinate that unless you just do it instinctually. Because, like Jonny was saying, you have to pull the robot away, smack the arm down, rotate the tube forward. That was just muscle memory at the end.
And I know that's something I really respected about you guys is while other people were saying like to just give up on it, you were just like, you just kept with it till you got it down. And it was critical. Like there was no way around it. We were not going to be good unless we had that down. So it was a really great thing.
That's us pulling on it. I just saw it straight. Yeah. It's like rotate. Yep. There you go.
I mean, scoring when there's no other ones there is a lot easier. One thing that I haven't mentioned yet that a lot of teams struggle with early on is you're standing behind the pegs. You're like scoring onto yourself and you're trying to do the first logo. So right now you guys are standing behind this. So you don't see triangle, circle, square. You see square, circle, triangle. And if you don't do it in the right order, you don't get the multiplier. It was like double points for doing the logo. So early competitions, teams would do it backwards and not get points.
And I just remember like craning forward and looking up because you're effectively like looking up there and scoring on, especially like the Uber tube and stuff. You really can't see the tip of the rung because the Uber tube is protecting it or hiding it or whatever. So like you're visually just blind and just driving in.
Yeah, and this is like a thing that happens in lots of years. There are little visual things that are hard. Our driver who is graduating this year, he would put rest his head on the glass to see like where balls were on the ground, to see like where like to align with stations over there. And I remember after matches, I would just see like his face print on the glass. Yeah, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything else from the Connecticut Regional before I move on to champs? Jonny, I have written down, I think it was the Connecticut Regional that you threw out your arm. Any advice you'd give to other human players? I don't know. From that experience?
I just remember having a blast being on the field. And I mean, I was throwing stuff and trying to get points. I was looking at some of the videos, like not all the human player stuff is active. I got like lucky that 2 of my years were.
I also feel, Jonny, remind me if I'm wrong, but I also remember you had 2 different throws, and I think we changed your throw in the middle. One of them was like the back arm chuck thing, like almost like butterfly swing, and one of them was the over the head, what's it called in ultimate and frisbee?
Like the hammer throw.
Like a hammer throw, yeah. I don't know which one ended up being better, but I remember you changed your throw mid-competition for some reason.
Yeah, I think I did like the butterfly thing, which I mean is also the reason why I threw out my arm.
Yeah.
I definitely have a picture like on Facebook. I think someone caught of me doing that motion. That looks awful.
There were some human players in this game that were incredible. Like there was I saw a couple clips of a human player who actually got a tube onto the rack, which does count.
Wow.
But the problem would be if you got it on the top rack and it wasn't a logo in the right place, then you're like really screwed yourself. But they would generally score on the bottom logos. The bottom things, they didn't really matter. This game really, if you got an Uber, like 3 Uber tubes up top, and you completed both logos, and you got first and second place in Minibot, you couldn't lose. So the lower racks, ultimately in the strategy of the game, didn't end up mattering too much.
Yeah.
The math worked out. Okay, so let's move on to the championship. I don't believe you guys made any modifications to the robot between Connecticut and championship.
Not the mini bot? Not like improving the
No,
mini
I think we just made multiple, and we tried to improve them there, but I don't think they really panned out.
Yeah, I remember coming back and seeing like a Minibot factory. Everyone was making more wild cards, which was just like just hilarious because Ariel was in the back making one of these, and everyone was kind of going in the other direction. Then you come back a few weeks later, and then just the entire team is just churning out these mini bots.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you made any like physical modifications. The robot, which is always a good thing going into champs. You very rarely want to make a major change to the robot going into champs, and you guys were just like making sure everything was more durable and getting the auton down. We went into champs and the auton was very consistent in the lab on what was the name of the practice bot? The robot was named Desdroid.
I don't remember.
Des Clone.
Des.
So you guys were just practicing with Des Clone, getting the autons to work.
Also, I think driving practice too. I seem to remember that as well. Just again, over and over. Yeah.
Yeah. So we go into champs, and so this was at that point. Joe Ricci was still the drive coach, and he was like moving to Boston the next year. So I remember I was like I wanted to drive coach because I felt like there was stuff that wasn't happening on the field, like we were like coming short of what we were capable of in some spots, and then I showed up. Like, because I flew separate from the team. I showed up at like 9 a.m. on practice day, snuck onto the field with Seth Berg's dad's media badge.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
I was like, I think I'd already talked to you and Alex about it and was like, you guys were on board. And I talked to Joe and he was like, go for it. And so it was like, okay, I was drive coach now. That was really cool. And we just hit the ground running at champs. It was like the robot was just durable, like never broke. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. It was just like the robot just started working really, really well at champs.
Yeah.
2 competitions to fix everything.
So it goes. I have some match footage from champs that I'll pull up. Here we go. So I remember at champs when we started, I think Adam, you led the charge with this. You would do a pre-match checklist.
Yes. I even think we somehow made it electronic. Like we had a little, like we had something with LEDs that we'd actually flick, right? I think.
Yeah. So I had your brother on for the 2007 recap, and he was talking about the same thing, which I think is really interesting. I think he tried to make something like it, and you actually made it in 2011.
Maybe I stole the idea from him. Who knows?
Or you improved on it, whatever.
Yeah, I do remember the checklist though, because there was something really stupid that happened either in the practice round. Oh, there's a lot of echo. Either in the practice rounds or in Connecticut, but there was something that went wrong, and we were like, "This should never, ever, ever happen again." And then so we just sat down, we put the list together, and we're like, "We're gonna check this damn thing every single time because we're not gonna lose for that."
And we would like go into the pit, and it was just like a well-oiled machine. It was like you guys were just leading the charge, and the robot would just get ready. And I could go, I could go with Sam, and we could get ready for the match for strategy. Now go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say because it was a well-known list too. I do remember being in charge of like actually doing the final checks, but because it was a well-known list, everybody on the team knew what to do and what needed to get done before every match. So I think there was like specific people would have specific subtasks. Actually, you know what it was? I think the frame clasp that Ariel made, the 694, I think that wasn't on top of the arm when we started or something to that effect. And we started a match and our arm just like flung up and something like that. But
I thought it was the servo string.
We
It
did
was
have
like something with the servo string. Something there just got caught. So we made sure to check that.
Mini bot deployment or something. Yeah. So after that, I remember there was just like certain people, and it would be every match coming into the pits, like 6 different people would all go and do their subtask, and then going onto the field, we do the final checklist.
And that's the first time in like the history of the team that I remember us doing something like that. And there are like seasons where we, do that, don't do it, and it's always like when we're doing that, we break so much less.
Yes.
You catch so much stuff. Now it's more of like everyone does it. It's not a question of should we do it. Sometimes the students start out a little bit slower with being organized with it, but by the end of the season, it's always kind of what I saw with you guys at championship, where we're just taking care of it. Like every match, here's what we're doing. It comes back in the pits. People go. They're working on their subsystem, making sure that it works. You're doing a systems check before we get out there. And we went out. We got the mini bot every single time in quals. We got the Uber tube every single time in quals. And we didn't score the most tubes, and we didn't have the fastest mini bot, but because we were so consistent, we made it to the top 8, which we'd never done before in our team's history. Like all the times we went there. Any other like memories from the championship quals before we jump into elims?
It's like looking at the Mecklen drivers again. Again, we're getting pushed around so much more.
Oh, yes.
That was a big problem in the champs. People started really pushing us because we were scoring well.
Yeah, I remember that being a big lesson was we needed to be able to be, I don't know what the word is, like defensible or something. Like we needed to be able to we just had no force to push against people.
Yeah. We just like we could get pushed sideways.
Yeah.
I remember there was one point during champs where I told Alex to like go sideways, and he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Strafe." Like he forgot he had Magnum wheels. It was just because he just started using it as arcade. Like we don't really strafe that much. If you watch us, there's not much strafing happening.
Yeah.
I feel like that strafing was also really slow.
Yes. But it turns out instead of strafing, you can also turn.
Yes. I feel like the reason.
Look how much better his alignment is here. Like he just goes. That's just practice.
Yeah. And see
and there it is falling off.
Yeah.
That's probably why we made multiple. That's a good break.
So, you guys remember the Black Eyed Peas concert?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know when we found out about that, but there was we show up and there was a black. I think like half of the St. Louis Dome was blocked off for this concert. So half the matches were in the convention center and half of them were in the Dome, and it was like the divisions switched depending on the day. And then in the evening before elims, there was a concert. And we all went, and I really didn't want to go. I don't know about you guys. You guys really want to
bitter about that, Joe, are we?
I think he wanted to have another strategy session.
Yeah,
Sure.
I like the Black Eyed Peas, don't get me wrong. And it was cool. Like, we heard songs that weren't even released yet. That was pretty cool. But we ended up getting back at like 11 o'clock, and then we had to have our strategy meeting. And Cologne wouldn't let the strategy kids stay up. So it was like me and Joe Ricci making a pick list, and then Unger making a pick list in her bedroom, and then us checking in the morning. It was like not ideal.
Yeah.
Yep, I think it's them just trying to make everything more popular, right?
No, we didn't do the pull move.
I think this match, our intake bottom roller is broken.
No. That makes sense.
I'm not positive. But it kind of looks like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we debated a lot. I remember in the morning talking to Sam. We were like talking a lot about what we wanted to do with an alliance. If we wanted to go for more of a consistent alliance, or if we wanted to go for, actually you can see them on the field here, Team 973. They were really risky because they didn't have an autonomous that worked, but they did have the fastest mini bot in the competition. We ended up not picking them, and they ended up being on the World Champion Alliance. But one of the reasons we couldn't pick them was because we didn't have a double tube Auton, whereas 254, who was the captain of that alliance, did have a double tube Auton. Okay, let's go back. Really see
probably really needed.
Good mini bot. So we ended up picking team 195, who was just awesome and consistent, and team 341, who was, we worked with them the previous year. They had a consistent autonomous, and they could play good defense. I'll play. I think this is the last quals match. We can jump into it after that. Yeah. Anything else from quals or the entire competition that you guys recall? Okay. Yeah. It was just. I remember we came out for our first match of a limbs day because there were quals matches in the morning, and we had a match with Team 111, who was one of the best teams in the world at that time. And Adam, I don't think you and Alex noticed, but there was a moment like when they were announcing the teams, and there was like we were about to start the match. I just like started looking around for a trash can because I was ready to hurl.
I wasn't gonna say this on the video and everything, but I do remember you had some very, very nervous moments as coach. But yeah, I don't know if it was this particular one, but there were times where you would be telling us stuff that Alex and I knew quite well, and we'd just be like, "Yep, no problem." Yeah, going into matches, I remember your nervousness. During the matches, honestly, it was probably a blur, and you were probably just shouting at us. But going into them, I feel like you would constantly be reminding us of stuff, and I do remember that.
I still do that.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed. You just kind of see us in this match really struggling with the defense. These teams are going back and forth, and we're struggling to get past them.
Yeah. No, I remember the mechanism hurt us there.
Yeah. But it helps us in the sense that we were able to score. That tube, you kind of saw the mechanism really coming in handy because we could just strafe to the side.
Have we gotten vector drive to work yet?
So no one calls it vector drive anymore. It's called swerve now.
All right.
It's pretty universally. Swerve. No, we have not. There's actually a group of students that were working on a design for it, and we were going to build it in this off season, but then COVID happened. And this was the first time I actually really believed that we were going to do it successfully. Like every other time we do it, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's just do it, whatever. Because I like, sure, just spin your wheels with it. Who are you hurting, right?
Yeah.
But this one, I actually really did believe that they were going to be successful with doing it, and it's really unfortunate. But hopefully, they'll be able to do it next off season. It's a big challenge mechanically, software, and I think that my biggest issue with it has always been it breaks, and it's really hard to repair. And if you're in the middle of like you're going from semifinals to finals, there's like not a lot of turnaround. And if you have a problem with your drivetrain, you can't do it. Moving sideways isn't really matter if you can't move, period.
Yep, that's fair.
And it's kind of like what you were saying with the controller. Sometimes it's just at the end of the day, good is good enough. Like just the joysticks was better than the buttons and stuff. So
yeah.
Similarly, I think. At the end of the day, they always say KISS, keep it simple, stupid. But
right.
It's honestly a lot of the best designs I remember were always just the stupidest, simplest design, and they just perfected it. They just did it really, really well and consistent.
And it's just like you have some amount of resources. If you're putting them into the swerve drive, they're not going into your other mechanisms as much. Okay, so here we have our first elimination match. And, we passed on 973, which I don't think was a mistake. There was no way, we can't build an alliance that's not able to score 3 Uber tubes. And there were no teams for us to pick in the first round who can do 2. But we had an alliance that could do 3 Uber tubes that had 3 mini bots. Sam built a really good alliance. This is terrific work. So we're watching this. This is the first match. We actually go forward to win this match. And do you guys remember what happened after we won the first match?
No.
The other alliance argued for a replay because the clock on like one of the sides went out. I don't know if you can, let me see if I can see it.
I do remember.
The clock on the driver station went out, which is the most like nonsense BS reason to get a replay ever. Like, I can't believe they convinced the referees to do that. Trying to see if you can see the clock frozen here. I think this is Sam videotaping. This is not the best. I'll make sure to yell at her later for it.
You know that mistake you made 9 years ago?
She knows. She actually, I'm muting this because she shouts a few expletives during this video, or maybe the other video. And we were talking about it on the call last week, or it might have been like before the call, how she said that stuff. But no, we built a really excellent alliance, and we I think we would have upset the 4 seed if we were more ready to argue the replays that they were getting and the penalties that they were calling.
Yeah, it's a pretty good lineup right there.
Yeah.
We put a lot up on the board.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm gonna turn my head.
Yep.
Boom. Yeah.
I think this is Sam celebrating because we won the first match, but then it ended up not counting. So we go to the replay, and we hit the 3 tubes again. And like at this point, the driving's so freaking good. Like, you guys are just like, we're such a just a well-oiled machine. It's just like, it's funny, you can see you leaning. It's just like in sync, don't have to say much to each other, and it just worked really well.
Yeah, I do remember it becoming
as you drop that too.
Yeah, literally the best time to say that. But I do remember us. It was just like each one of us at the end became like independent, but at the same time it was synchronized because we knew what we had to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think we dropped this one as well. No, okay. Wait, no, I think we hit it out as we go away. No, we don't. Okay, cool.
So remember, do we have lights on the top floor?
Yes. So the limit switch on the intake, when that would trigger, the lights would turn on.
Yeah, I guess a nifty way to know whether or not we have 2.
I mean, it's you can see the robot's not perfect. Like, the intake's a little slow. It's a little bit, clunky, the robot itself. But you guys just really, you squeezed every ounce of goodness out of it as you drop another.
No. There's a knocking the tube out.
I'm gonna stop.
This is the worst.
I'm gonna stop giving compliments. But I think to this point in our team, and I'm gonna include myself in this, I think this was the best driving we'd ever had.
Yeah.
A 469 does something really brilliant here. We're going back to go to our mini bot, and they just shove us into their tower and we can't do anything to get out. And they touch us. It's like, see, we're blue. We're in this red zone, and they're touching us. So they force us to commit a penalty, which is like, maybe a little dirty, but it's a brilliant move. They forced a penalty on us, perfectly legal, and they stopped us from getting back. So we don't get the mini bot off either. and we lose on that. So, you know, got to hand it to him. And Sam is shouting right now. But the thing that we weren't doing when we were going back early is there's a protected zone that you can park in when you're doing the mini bot. So like these colored taped zones, red zone on this side, blue zone on the other side. We should have been parking in there when we were doing the mini bot, but we never really practiced that. And it would have been nice to do that more regularly because it made it harder to defend. I think, you know, we got to a consistent place and we didn't want to change things up because we don't want to lose that consistency. But there were like little, there was like that little detail we could have added to our repertoire that would have made us a little harder to defend.
It's also the first time that we like had defense focused on us.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure if we had like another match or two after this, we would have switched things up a little bit. We don't have video of match 2. I guess Sam got upset and didn't videotape it. But, you know, we lost there, but I really felt like this was, we didn't have any like hardware to show for it. We went to quarterfinals in each of our regionals and champs. But I felt like this was one of our best robots or best seasons. I don't know. I had a lot of fun this year working with you guys. I thought we really pulled together in the end, and we did something we never done before, which was we were captains at champs, which is really, really hard to do. And this was like, you look back at this division, this was the division. It had so many good teams. The world champion came out of this division. And we were like, we beat 254. We gave them one of their only losses at champs. So that's something to hang our hat on. Any more reflections? Okay. Well, before we wrap up, I just want to show a couple of the best robots from that season, and then I'll let you guys go. And you know, if you remember anything about them, you can feel free to shout it out. Okay. So 254 ended up being world champs. I think this was really, in terms of the logo scoring mechanism and like the thing they used to go up and down, I think this was really the ticket, the best style design. There were lots of these. So just an intake on a lift that had a wrist on it to go up and down, and then a pneumatic to release the tube.
Wait, what did you say the gripper was? It was pneumatics, you say?
So they have rollers, and they also have a piston in there to let go.
I think I'm seeing a pneumatic actuator like at the top of that camera.
It's right here. You actually see it.
Yeah, and I just saw it release the gripper.
Oh, it's
release the tube.
the jaw. Okay.
Yeah.
Which
I know every year we've talked about anodizing the robot and then never finishing it early enough.
We still haven't done that. I want to do red and gold, even though our colors are red and white, because Iron Man is just like, no team has that corner yet. I feel like we could take up that corner. This was a really interesting robot that went to Einstein that year, 1503. They couldn't pick up from the ground. They were human player load only. Not a lot of teams did that, but they were just like very consistent. They would just go back and forth. And what was, I thought, really interesting from that year is they finished their robot early. They had so much time, and they figured out a way to do 2 tubes in auto. See if I can find a match where they do it. Okay, so here they are. So do you see this tube that's near this tower?
Yeah.
So they would score this first one backwards, and then what they would do is they would drive their drivetrain into that tube. The tube would hit this cylinder and prop the tube up in such a way that they could grab it. Let's see if we can see it in this video, or if the camera guys don't catch it. Next video it is. But it just shows you what you can do if you finish really early. You might have like some ability that you didn't give your robot, and then you realize, wait, we can actually figure out a way to do that. Okay.
But that's relying on the fact that the third robot's not scoring there too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also gives you the
Which is
flexibility to have something else.
Yeah. But one of the limitations for us as we picked alliances is we couldn't pick 973 because they couldn't score an Uber tube. But if we were able to score 2, we wouldn't have that issue, right? We could have picked them, and because they had the fastest mini bot in the game. And part of the reason 254 won was they were able to pick them because they did have a 2-tube auto. 1503 is human player only, so they don't pick up off the ground. They just go back and forth, which is kind of crazy for a game like this, but a really interesting limitation that they put on themselves.
I'm not sure if I ever use that slot. I think I just focus on throwing stuff down there.
Yeah. I think, Jonny, you just did Hail Marys into the middle of the field.
Yeah, because we don't. What's the point of going back there?
Yeah.
But it's just crazy how much they were able to score. Really good driving.
Yeah,
and it's
really fast.
Yeah, and you think about it, this robot's so simple. It's an arm, and it's a claw, and it's a grabber. There's no motion out. There's no like deploying out of your frame because they can't pick it off the ground.
What's also interesting is they're always driving in the same direction. The robot's always facing the same way effectively, and they're just scoring backwards and then picking up forwards and scoring back. Like that. I think we spent a good amount of time just flipping a robot around back and forth. So
whenever you can do something like that, it's smart. You know, I think early on in the season, looking at what can you do to prevent turns, right? What can you do to effectively save time in your cycles? Here's another really great robot from that year, 1114. I think they had the best robot that year. Pretty much the same design as 254, wrist, roller claw with a pneumatic on a lift. I think lifts were really the best thing for this game. I remember we talked about it early in the season, but we just like didn't know how to build one. Like, it's not simple if you've never done it before.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's something we want to spend the time doing. It's easy to pick a design first and then kind of start building, especially if you have experience doing so.
Yeah. .148, I believe, had like the dropped Omni wheels. That's how they moved sideways.
Oh man, Omni wheels.
Look at that underbody lighting. Whew.
I feel like we're always like trying to shave off whatever weight we can.
Underbody lights don't weigh anything. Our robots nowadays weigh like 110. We're so far under the weight limit.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I remember being like, what can we put holes into?
Yes.
Weight?
Swiss cheesing like crazy.
What
was the limit?
So it was 120. Now it's 125. Swiss cheesing is a really bad way to lose weight. Like if you do the density calculations, it's a horrifically terrible way to lose weight. The best way to lose weight is material selection. Something steel and you make it aluminum. Well, you just cut its weight into 3.
Yeah. That's what. Then we pick fiberglass.
Don't pick a material that will fall apart, though. One more robot I want to show. I think this one was really interesting. Team 233. They had a 3-tube auto, which is crazy.
Okay.
They were able to score and pick up on opposite ends because their arm. Well, they could score and pick up on either end of the robot.
Like a periscoping arm. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We actually built a
the
telescoping arm this year.
Sorry?
We built a telescoping arm in 2020.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
And it worked.
key detail.
There's one more bot. I'm just going to show this video, and then we can call it, because I think this was the first year that one team was really good, and this video is just awesome.
I think I remember you loving this video.
It's just such a good video. I want to unmute it. It's being a little laggy. Video is so cool. It's basically Batman. It's so awesome. Okay, the last thing I'll say about this game, the mini bots in the end ended up being critical. The Championship Alliance, really what set them apart was they got up there first and second like every time. And the thing that the fast mini bots all had was they ended up with a ramp. So every minibot was pretty much the same by the end. We had the general what minibot teams built, which was direct drive, motors to the axles, magnets to hold on, and a switch up top. But what these teams had is they had a ramp. So they would line up this ramp on like our drawbridge thing on the peg, and then on the what that pipe thing was called. And then as soon as the 10-second mark hit, the minibot would drive up that ramp, because the ramp was made of the same material as or at least a magnetic material, and it would go up that pipe. And the reason it was so good was the minibot was able to accelerate along the ramp. So when they hit the pole, they were already going at speed, versus when we would hit the pole, the minibot would just start to accelerate. Any last reflections on the game, or any robots, any lessons learned that you would want to share with the kids?
Let's learn. I think big thing was having that second one. I think, as we've been saying all throughout this, the practice made things so much better and so much smoother, and it gives us, I guess, extra time to do all the stuff we want to do with it after build season.
So
programming.
There's no more bag day, so actually you can keep working on your robot between events now.
Wow. Okay, things have changed.
Yeah, this was the first that. Jonny, were there any like major lessons you learned, being a leader, a student on the team, that you would want to pass along to some of the up and coming students or new leaders?
Being a leader, I think part of what you were saying and part of what helped with the co-presidency was just getting everyone involved and getting them engaged, getting them willing to do stuff like to help the robot, help the team. I think there are definitely times that, you always get a mixed amount of people that show up. It's like not always engaging everyone and trying to just figure out who would be suited for what, instead of letting people explore, which during the time crunch of the season is incredibly hard to do. But allowing people to do that lets you actually see what people are capable
What about you, Adam? Any other things you want to say about the season, or lessons you learned, things you want to pass along to younger members?
Yeah, just kind of echoing some of the comments Jonny was saying, and like what we've been saying, where keeping it simple, trying to build practice robots, trying to I mean, I seem to remember also one of the reasons we were able to lock down the drivetrain so fast was because we had been thinking, we basically had like 3 designs in the pipeline before the season started, and then when we were like just looking at the strategy, we're like, okay, we're gonna pick this one. But I seem to remember we had already ideas of designs, ideas of the CAD ready to go, and so we were able to just churn that out relatively quickly. And I mean, even now we're talking about it, like 9 years later, the very first thing that's most critical is the drivetrain. So it's like locking that down, and that is something where, given all the CAD you guys have from the last like whatever 9-10 years and stuff, it should be relatively easy to just get that ironed out and move on to the actual strategy of the match. Yeah, I mean, again, it's involving more of the team. Like you said, that was the first time we had software playing a big support and everything. And I also remember that as being one of the years where strategy was more organized also. I just remember like we kind of just had our shit more together. Maybe it was because we were less focused on building the robot and we had more time to spend on that. I don't really remember, but yeah, it's keeping it simple. Honestly, really has. I mean, over the 4 years that we were there and we were doing it, it always was the simple designs that really won out in the end. And even this video you just showed, it's just a simple idea of just flipping back and forth, so you don't even have to spin your robot. Like just wherever you can simplify what's needed from the human. Will improve the game significantly and make for a more seamless play. But, yeah.
So I think the last thing before I let you guys go is I think that a lot of the kids are curious kind of where you guys went to school, what you guys are doing nowadays, what you're up to. So I'll start with Jonny. Jonny, can you tell the kids where you went to school, what you're working on nowadays?
Sure. So after STUY, I went to MIT, studied mechanical engineering, kind of with a focus on robotics. I knew I wanted to build stuff, wasn't sure exactly what. I realized like data analytics, following that. So went to consulting after MIT, left that about a year ago to join a robotics company based out in Somerville in Massachusetts called Right Hand Robotics. They make, or we make, robotic arm pickers to go in factories and kind of pick stuff up and put stuff down. So
cool. I did not know that. That's awesome. Okay, Adam, how about you?
So after STUY, I went to Princeton, did electrical engineering, then attempted to do a master's at Carnegie Mellon stuff. It wasn't a good fit for me culturally and everything. I was a little bored and stuff. It was a robotics master's with business, which was a lot of what my interests were. And so I left that to go join a startup in Boston called Jibo. They were like a social animated Google Home, you can think of it. The company did really well in terms of the product. It's just it was overpriced and it ended up hurting us. And then after that idea came out, Amazon Alexa and Google Home came out, and that undercut it on price and features. And then so I left that after 2 years and came out to California to work at Google on Google Home products and Nest Home products. And so that's where I'm working now, and I'm working on audio EE, so audio electrical engineering, kind of like everything before the speakers, so the amplifiers, the microphones, stuff like that. And yeah.
Very cool. That's really awesome. I didn't ask you about that, so I was really wondering what you guys were working on. Like, oh God, I hope they didn't get like laid off or anything. I'm just okay. No, I'm glad to hear you guys are doing well and making all of us proud. Thanks so much for logging on. This was super fun. It was great talking to you guys. I hope you had fun. And for those of you who are tuning in, I'll see you guys hopefully next week when we'll talk about the 2012 season. Thanks a lot.
Cool. Thanks.